with her Bachelor in Fine Arts and received her MA in French from Middlebury College. She lived in Charleston and returned to Greenwood in 1994 and accepted her position at the Arts Council. The Arts Council of Greenwood is much like the Chapman Cultural Center. They own and operate the 30,000 square foot Greenwood Arts Center, and they also focus in arts education for youth and adults. The center serves as a central community venue for public and private events. In the past 12 years, the Art Center has welcomed over 185,000 visitors. So we welcome a great arts leader from Greenwood. And she also serves alongside Ken and I in the South Carolina Arts Alliance, which is our leading arts advocacy organization. We're joined by one of our dynamic leaders in Spartanburg, Alan Smith. Alan is the Chief Executive Officer of our Spartanburg Chamber and also serves on the board of the Chapman Cultural Center. He previously served as president of the Greer Chamber of Commerce, and during that time, the Greer Chamber was named the 2012 Carolinas Chamber of the Year. So Alan is a dynamic chamber leader. He grew up in Greenville, North Carolina, and served in their chamber. He's a graduate of East Carolina University and is leading our One Spartanburg vision with other leaders. I think Todd Corn is here. He was part of that, and many of us are on the task force. But Alan has also earned, which is very important as it relates to economic development, the ACC Certified Chamber Executive Certification. So we're glad to have Alan's expertise on the panel. And then we have Tim Todd, and Tim is here. Where'd Tim go? He's walking up, okay. Tim is the Executive Director of the Discover Upcountry Carolina Association, and this is a very important part of the Upstate. He represents 6 of the 10 counties as a tourism and recreation management association for our area. He is a graduate of Clemson University, majoring in Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Management. And when he graduated in 1985, he was the promotions director for Wildwater Limited, a whitewater rafting. So if you love that, which I do, we have to talk to him about getting whitewater rafting in Spartanburg County. We have 7 rivers in Spartanburg, but I don't think we have any whitewater rafting. Not yet, maybe we can build our own. He planned residential community at Kiowee and has been a great leader in attracting tourism to the Upstate through Discover Upcountry. So I sent them some questions to get our conversation started, but Melissa and Sam are here with mics, and so be thoughtful about how this information that you've learned about today and what we're talking about, what Anthony presented that you want to know more about. But Alan, I'm going to start with you, if you don't mind. I might take this out of here because I don't want to talk to you from behind your head. How do you see local chambers and economic development leaders using this information to attract jobs and retain and attract a talented workforce?
Well, I was hoping Sam was sitting here, he would have gotten the first question. Well, thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and thank you for laying out why this is so important. And I think, you know, based on that question, my mind quickly races to Amazon. Everybody's talking about Amazon. There are more than 250 communities that were competing to land HQ2. And so now it's down to 20 communities. And I would bet if you did an overlay of data, you would see that the 20 remaining finalists are probably some of the most culturally, I guess, advanced communities in the nation. And I don't think that's an accident. I don't think that's an accident because it comes down to one thing, and that's talent. Today, people are choosing place before position. You know, it used to be, and I know people from Spartanburg have heard me say this a million times, but it's the truth. It used to be that someone would go get a 4-year degree, say in accounting. They would graduate and they would move to the very first community that offered them an accounting job. Let's just use Bangor, Maine as an example. It's freezing in Bangor, Maine. Why would you voluntarily live there? But 50 years ago, it was position first. So Johnny would go home and Johnny would say, Mom and Dad, I got a job in accounting and I'm moving to Maine. And they would say, wonderful. Today what happens is we have folks graduating with a 4-year degree, and they're coming home and they're talking to their parents and they're saying, I'm moving to Charleston. And they say, wonderful, what accounting firm did you get a job with in Charleston? And they say, I don't have a job in accounting. I want to be in Charleston. And I'm going to live in a dilapidated house in downtown, pay 2 times what's fair, and live with 7 people because I want to be in Charleston. And so they, they're a barista at a coffee shop, or they bartend, or they do whatever they want to do. And in time, they will get that accounting job, but they're choosing place before position. And the communities that are winning and recruiting talent are the communities that have placed a priority on cultural vitality. So, a lot of times in economic development, we think about water or sewer, and we talk about fee in lieu of agreements and so on and so forth. Those things are critically important. But today, I think the number one most critically important thing is talent. And the communities that are going to win are going to be the ones that win with talent. And the communities that are going to fall to the wayside are the ones that aren't thinking about talent. And we have to think about talent from a regional standpoint. I mean, obviously in Spartanburg County, we're doing a lot of things to recruit talent to Spartanburg County. But we have to think about talent as a regional effort, or we're not going to be successful. We just do not have, again, the 20 finalists for Amazon were massive population centers. We don't have that kind of population on our own. And so we have to start an image or a perception that, hey, it's the Upstate, it's the Upstate. We'll be much more successful instead of just marketing our individual communities from a talent standpoint.
Thank you. That leads to my question to Ann about regionalism. And Greenwood is considered one of our more rural counties. And, what does this mean, this asset map, a collection of 1,500 cultural assets, mean to you as an arts leader in Greenwood?
Well, we've all talked about the data revolution today, and so that rules. And having the information necessary out there for people to access. Also the ease of use of that data, as some of us say, it's a little bit harder for some of us to access, so making that easy and finding it in one place is very helpful. I love the idea of the compacted data, having it be regional as opposed to each of us just staying in our one town or one metropolitan area. And then for a town like Greenwood, we're happy to be associated with Greenville and Spartanburg or Oconee, something that other people maybe have heard of. Everywhere I go and say, well, I'm from Greenwood, out in the larger world, and then I always say, it's close to Greenville. So as people are searching and they have a name in mind, they will see the larger area in a larger picture, and we'll be happy to be part of that.
I think that's important. Tim, I want to ask you a question about tourism. When you think about cities like Los Angeles or Atlanta, at traveling to Boston and Denver, to cities that have, regions of culturally vibrant, they consider themselves one town. And I love that we call ourselves the Upstate because it's nothing to drive to Anderson. It's 40 minutes from Spartanburg. And people drive 40 minutes to get 5 miles in Los Angeles or Atlanta. So I feel like we have to have a mindset as a community that internally it's not that far to drive to Anderson to a cultural event or to Greenwood to a cultural event. How do we sell that, Tim? How do you feel like we can work in this area to use this to compete as a tourism destination in the world and in the Southeast?
I think already in this church, everybody's singing off the same hymn page. So it's not the people in this room, and it's not leadership like you and Dean and the others, and Alan and Ken on a statewide basis, and Ann, who appreciate the shout out to Oconee, my home county, who's again incredibly has done some incredible things over the last few years with their Heritage Center, with their the cultural arts, in addition to all the natural resources they have. But it is to break down those barriers of city lines, county lines, and think like the tourist thinks from the tourism standpoint. Is they may go to Denver, but do they know what county they're in Denver? When you say, what county are you in when you're in Denver? Most people probably don't know. They just know they're in Denver. They probably don't know whether they're in the city limits of Denver, or whether they're in the county area, or maybe in an adjacent town even, but it's all Denver, and that's the brand. For here, I think we do, yeah, we're not exactly Charleston, we're definitely not Atlanta, LA, and from my standpoint, don't really want to be that big. But by having, like you say, what we have is an area that's much larger, that has everything you want except an ocean. And I think if you get up on Lake Jocassee, if I dropped you off in a place in Lake Jocassee, you would think you're in the Caribbean. So we have everything here, from the culture, from the history, from the recreation, from the outdoors. The culinary has become on strong the last several years. Spartanburg's done a great job with that. Greenville and others have done such a great job of that. And it's been great to see over the last 28 years. Jennifer was saying I've been here 30 years, and don't exaggerate too much, it's only been 28. To see that there is that regionalism, and that you see people, and you talk to people now that, when you mentioned driving to Grits and Groceries. Anybody heard of Grits and Groceries in Belton, South Carolina? It's not in Belton, it's in the suburbs of Belton. It's in the middle of nowhere, called Sailor's Crossing, but go there any day except Monday when they're closed, Sunday and Monday when they're closed, and any day, and you'll see people from Greenville, you'll see people from Oconee, you'll see people from Greenwood, you'll see people that drive 40 miles to go to this little place called Grits and Groceries. And so we have such tremendous assets that are reachable, and we still have to do a little bit of local awareness, I think, for that, and get people out of that, little cluster mindset. But we have it, and I think all we got to do is keep singing off that same song book, and keep going where we're going. As Jennifer said, I represent 6 of the 10 counties, but we work very closely with our other regional partners. And again, just because we represent those 6 counties doesn't mean we don't want to work with the other counties, the other 4 counties, plus any others that make sense to do what we need to do to bring people here. So it's exciting to see all the efforts that Dean and the group at 10 at the top have been doing over the last several years. I've been involved with the community vibrancy part of that for since early on anyway, maybe not the beginning, but fairly early on, and to see what that's, get the people to talk to each other from all the way from Cherokee County all the way to Abbeville County is not an easy task, even though you might think it would be. So they've done a great job of doing that.
So thank you, and that leads me to my question to Ken May, our South Carolina Arts Commission Director. When you think about us now with this new regional approach, how does this help advance the Arts Commission's agenda as it relates to the state cultural districts and our cultural sector as a region? How does that look, looking at us from a state perspective?
Well, it's interesting. You've got over 1,300 assets or so identified as a region, but ironically we're talking about regional, but I'm thinking also the opportunities that exist for individual communities within this cluster. In 2014, we got some legislation passed, sponsored by Senator Floyd Nicholson from Greenwood, that would allow us to, as an agency, designate cultural districts in communities around the state. And it's pretty liberal set of requirements, but essentially it is focused on identifying the assets, the creative assets in a community within generally a walkable footprint, and then drawing a circle around it and promoting it. So you have the beginnings here of a great, at least couple of handsful of new cultural districts potentially. Spartanburg was one of our first cultural districts. Greenwood has just come on as the most recent one of 7. But we found that probably the most valuable aspect of doing that work is the community's own recognition of its maybe unrecognized assets, and really highlighting those and saying, wow, we actually have quite a bit here that we can do something with. Speaking of doing something with, in statewide perspective, we started this program in 2014. It's been building slowly. It is getting some momentum, but the next phase that we see is then beginning to take these communities that have identified their own cultural districts and find a way to promote them jointly. So this ties right into this regionalism that you're talking about, except taking it on a statewide basis. They're pretty well distributed around the state, and our next move is to begin to work with Parks, Recreation, and Tourism to link these together and do some joint promotion. So that's our next move, and I hope that we will really get started on that later this spring. But we would like to see some more communities in this upstate cluster come on and join that program. You can talk to Jennifer or Ann about what it takes. It's a bit of an effort. It requires the city to sign on and take specific action to designate or to request that they be designated. But I think every community that's done it has found that it's well worth their time and effort.
Anthony, you wanted to add to that?
Sure. I think I would encourage people to think about the benefit of technology today, how you can create tours, art and tourism, combo tours, because you have mapping, you have someone in that little machine who can tell you how to turn the corner to get to here. You can do all that. You can have a podcast about whatever they're going to see. You can have a little video. That's never been possible before. And so you could do that, and that's something I'd encourage. It's not terribly expensive. It takes some time and energy. It's not terribly expensive. You can develop multiple trails. I'd also like to say, people like weird things. And I'm sure in these 10 counties, there are weird things that people want to see, and they will come here to see strange things. I'll give you an example. In Rangeley, Colorado, which is about 4 hours from Denver on the Utah border, there is an old water tank for steam engines that's been empty for years, and it's now used as a music venue. And people play in this echoey, giant water tank, and they come from all around, and they have festivals around it and special conferences. So there are weird things, and I'm sure you have at least one weird thing in each county.
Well, and you know, that's what makes each of our counties unique and authentic, and people travel to see authentic things. And that's what is really exciting about this map, is that it's not a duplication of anything. It is a highlighting of what makes each of our counties unique and collectively together. Melissa, if you'll come down. Anyone have questions? Sam is on this side with the microphone. Who has questions? You don't have to have a mic, you can just yell it out, but what are your thoughts, questions? We can continue. You know, when you think about tourism, each county, not every county has a chamber, but you have a county administrative office. I mentioned Bob Hartraker, who's here with our planning department. Every county that's representative here has a planning office, and I think it's really important that you start with them and make them aware that this asset inventory exists, because they're using our asset inventory in the county comprehensive planning process. So just to even locally use that as part of your conversation with your county planners. Does every county have a chamber of commerce, Alan, in the 10-county region? Something like that, kind of an economic development engine. That's the next place that we went. I went to visit the city communications staff. Christopher George is here, part of our city staff. Just, you know, really, as you don't have to be the arts leader in your meeting, you can just say, look what 10 of the Top's doing, and go and inform your local legislators. Who's got any questions for the panel? Anybody out there? It's a lot of information. I think that we look at, somebody has to go. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Anthony, I want to ask you a question. It sounds like you've been involved with your economic development organization there in Denver. Have you actually been, or have they actually included a person that represents the arts or the creative industry in visits from prospects that are coming into Denver? Are they, you know, I work for a utility. We're generally part of the sort of the outside team that's brought in. And I was just interested in your perspective on that.
Sometimes they do. They do now more than they used to. But the answer is sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Give you an example. Boeing was looking for a new location for their corporate headquarters, and they ended up in Chicago. Denver was on the map, and Denver was one of the facilities, or one of the regions they looked at. And I have a friend who used to be on the board, from the Boeing board, when they were looking, and he said, I was completely embarrassed. All they showed us was the Broncos training camp, the Broncos Mile High Stadium. He said, we didn't care about that. We cared about quality of life and art. So they've learned from that. So far better than it used to be. Not perfect yet, but far, far, far better. And I think one thing that's made a difference in Denver is the Scientific and Cultural Facilities District, which is a self-imposed tax, and it brings in about $50 million a year for cultural activities, and that has helped raise the consciousness a great deal. So again, the short answer, they're learning, they're not perfect yet, but they've been burned once with a really bad idea. So.